This is Mr. Hanna, and welcome to What the Format. Today we're going to go over multiplying polynomials. Okay, so typically the most common, especially when you first start out, is you're going to have a binomial times a binomial. You could have a binomial times a trinomial. Now, hopefully you notice that there really is no limit to what you have. You could have a 4-term polynomial times a 5-term polynomial. And of course, those would just be longer problems. Now, usually with 2, you might hear the acronym FOIL, F-O-I-L. What does that stand for? Well, it's the first terms right here, the 7x times the negative 2x. Then you have your outside terms, so 7x times the 4. So those are your first and outside term. Then you have your inside terms, and then you have your last terms. Okay. Now, I was taught this when I was a student, used it for many years. It's never been a problem for me. However, it is a little limiting, or a lot limiting, I should say, because it's only good for 2 by 2 when you have a binomial times a binomial. What do you do when you have down here? Well, so I like to think of it as actually I'm just using the distributive property. What does the distributive property say? Well, if you multiply into a set of parentheses, everything on the outside has to multiply by what's on the inside. So since I have 2 terms out here, I have to first take the 7x and multiply it by everything inside the parentheses, which is the 7x times the minus 2x, the 7x times the 4. So what am I going to do down here? Well, the 2x is going to go times the 3x squared. Then it's going to go times the negative 2x. Then it's going to go times the negative 5. And once I've done the 2x times the 3 terms, now I move over and do the 7. 7 times 3x squared. 7 times minus 2x. 7 times minus 5. Now you can draw the arrows there to help you see it, but essentially this is just 4 multiplication problems. This is 5. Okay. Now something to note, when we multiply, the exponent is actually going to change. When we added polynomials, if you go back to adding and subtracting the polynomials, you'll notice that the exponents didn't change. Very important to notice that. We only change exponents when we multiply. And what rule do we follow? Well, if you go back to the exponent rules, when you're multiplying like bases, so a to the m times a to the n, it was equal to a to the m plus n. We're going to add the exponents. That didn't happen when we added or subtracted polynomials, but it will do that when we multiply the polynomials. So be very, very careful of that. Exponents only change when you're multiplying or dividing. When you're adding or subtracting, you're only adding or subtracting the coefficients. You do not change the powers. Okay, so here, 7 times negative 2, negative 14. X times x is x squared. Please make sure you get that x squared. See, a lot of students just put negative 14x. You need to recognize that x times x is x squared. Now, 7 times 4 is a 28. There is only one x, so that's what we put. Now we move over, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6x. I like to line up the like terms. There's my negative 6x. Why did I move over? Well, because this was an x times an x, which gave an x squared. That's my highest powers. Much like on numbers where you put a 0 to hold the place as you move left, since we start with the highest power, instead of moving left, we're going to move to the right. Okay, and 3 times negative 2x, see, that's lined up my like terms, and I move left to do that, or right to do that. Now 3 times 4 is plus 12. Then what do? Well, then you just combine the like terms. Okay, so then here, when I add that, I'm going to move it over here so I have some room. Well, I'll go ahead and erase these arrows. So those arrows are nice to guide, but you can see in this case I didn't give myself enough room. They kind of got in the way. So I'll remove them for now. So then that's going to be negative 14x squared. 28 minus 6 is plus 22x, and then there's plus 12, and I've multiplied those two binomials, and that's it. Okay, now over here, again, I'll put these arrows back. We got the 2 times that, we got that times that, and then we got that times that. So 2x times 3x, well, 2 times 3 is 6, so that's going to be 6. X times x squared, x cubed. Okay, very important to see that. That's a 1. If there's no exponent there, it's a 1. That's implied, so 1 plus 2 is 3. Now 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. X times x is x squared. And 2 times negative 5 is negative 10x. So notice here I only had the 4 terms. Now I've got 3. I'm going to have 3 more. That's because there were more terms to multiply. Okay, now 7 times 3 is 21x squared. Again, notice that I move over to line up the squareds. 7 times negative 2 is negative 14x. Notice how my x terms line up. And then 7 times negative 5 is negative 35. And then all I have to do is, again, similar to there, combine like terms. If there's nothing to combine, I just bring it down. 6x cubed plus 17x squared minus 24x minus 35. So there you have it. Notice again, in the addition subtraction, if you go back and watch that video, the exponents on the variables didn't change. Here the exponents change. And that's multiplying polynomials. Notice again, FOIL, I put it here because you're going to see it. You can Google it, it's a common thing. But also recognize it only applies when you have a binomial times a binomial. Here, when we have binomial times trinomial, we can't use that acronym, but we still are using the distributive property. So I don't like thinking of FOIL anymore. Again, I just say, oh, we're distributing. Everything on the outside multiplies with everything in the inside. I just do it one at a time, put all the terms together, and I just combine like terms, take it one step at a time. And yes, the problems get long. And if you're not careful, you're going to miss a number or miss a combination of signs, and it's going to mess everything up. Also notice that my rules are different here. When I had two positives multiplying, they multiply to a positive. Two negatives multiply to a negative. That's different than your addition subtraction rules, so make sure to note that. Opposite signs are always negative when you're multiplying or dividing. Okay, make sure you watch that. Now I have video on that too earlier on my channel. If you look at that, it goes over what to do with sign numbers, but that's just a kind of a refresher to show you. And also your exponent rules, remember when you multiply like bases, you're adding. So that's how you multiply polynomials. Well, thank you very much for watching. This has been Mr. Hanna with What the Format. Happy mathing.